Are we live? I'm still looking at a graphic. Oh, there it is. You did it again.
It's for a slow
Ah,
second.
he
It's not
always
easy.
does that to me.
It's not easy.
So I'm trying to figure out how to make this thing on my page, like where people can see it.
So
Sorry, that's an entertaining way to start the show, I'm
yeah,
sure.
dude.
But
fuck,
it's
man.
driving me
I love it.
nuts.
I love it. I'm over here having the time of my life, Bob.
Yeah.
You're fucking. It's a thrilling start so we can wrap up.
Oh,
Here,
edit privacy.
They will smack your
Public.
face into a car windshield
All right.
and then take your mother, Dorothy, man, to that
Ooh, I
nice
think-
seafood dinner and never call her again.
Okay, I can move on with my life.
Same.
Better. This is our third episode of the weekend wrap up, and I think we're cooking. It's been a fun couple of weeks so far, and I'm really looking forward to talking to our guests this week. In the weekend the weekend wrap up, I want to tell you guys about the shows that happened this week.
Tell us.
Thursday at Hiller, Mr. Clit and the Pink Cigarettes and Pilots and Anemic Royalty played at, did I already say at Hiller?
I'll have to rewind it.
I'll
I'll check the YouTube later and let you know.
Replay. So that show was at Hiller. And then Friday at the Mel was Deadfoot and Noise Control, Spineless Heartless, and the Lovesick Junkies. I was actually out at that show.
I like that
It was
band name
fire.
a lot.
Which one?
The
Lovesick
last one.
Junkies.
Lovesick Junkies.
Yeah. And was talking to a couple of band members back in the Smoker's Garden at that one. They seem like really cool guys too. Noise Control was for us like the pleasant surprise. We didn't know. They all had like different colored jumpsuits on, and man, they're pretty awesome.
Sounds dope.
Always awesome. So and then at Long Shot Saturday, Southbound Beretta, Free Candy, Cease and Resist, and the Steves played at Long Shot. And I guess at Long Shot they've been having some issues with the government.
Yeah, just a little bit.
I don't know the full story, but I'm told that they'll be getting that ironed out soon and everything will be back to normal, I think. So
Yep.
hopefully everybody
Tad, you're in our
will
thoughts.
be patient and
prayers.
because Long Shot's awesome. Yeah.
Hell yeah, man.
Tad's awesome.
So dope.
And then at the Mall last night, Third Rail, Everything's Dead, and Poison Breath, and that we were also there. That was awesome show. And Third Rail, I think playing WrestleMania pretty soon.
Yeah, that's right.
Might be getting
Not one,
Jeff on
not
the show.
two, but 3 rails.
Yeah, all three of them. He actually was telling this. Telling the story on stage last night about Third Rail, and it's I guess about like pissing on the subways in New York or something. There's like a rail that if you pee on it, it electrocutes you.
Hell yeah!
So that's the actual maybe meaning or
I
whatever.
wonder who's the first one that tried it. Who's probably Jeff?
Probably wasn't
Just Jeff Parks. I'm just kidding, Jeff.
He's probably the one that discovered it as a thing and was like, "That's going to be the band."
That's it, right there. Never forget that one time when I was 11.
But
Pissed on the third rail.
Yeah, you did.
No, god dang it! I give up.
So, yeah, that's what I.
You're cracking me up this morning, man.
Sorry, I guess I'm on one today.
Hell yeah, that's a lot of cool stuff.
So I feel like I'll introduce our guests and then we'll bring them on, Chef, so we can get into it, man. What do you think? Yeah? You like the sound of that?
3 thumbs up.
Do we have any? Are you seeing any comments or anything?
No comments yet. No, sir.
All right. Well, I would like to encourage if you guys are tuning in and have any questions for the guests, uh, chime in and we'll try to get those on air as well. So we have some very accomplished people joining us today, and it's hard not to be intimidated a little bit, but we'll do our best. I feel bad for Shep, especially.
I'm good.
So joining us today is Dr. Sarah and Sarah's partner, Kris. Sarah Ratekin. I think last week on the show I said it wrong.
Is
I
it
think
pronounced
that's it.
Ratekin?
Yep, like radical.
Okay. All right. I've been saying it wrong. My apologies. I was
Yeah.
saying Ratekin.
Ratekin.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
But it's
Not a big
Ratekin.
deal.
Ratekin. We
That's
got it
nice.
right this time.
Hell yeah.
And Doctor, do I call you Dr. Ratekin? Do we
Are you an
know
asshole?
Sarah?
Only
Sarah-
assholes have to call me doctor.
Okay. So Sarah is
That
fine
works.
and Kris is fine.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Coming on to promote an event that I believe you're the founder and main organizer here of this event, coming up on March 20th, called the Happiness in the Heartland.
Correct.
So I think that would be a great place for us to start if you'd like to tell us about the event that you got cooking up there.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Nick. It's the whole premise of this is life is hard, right? And life in Indiana, particularly, is not necessarily always awesome. And it's not
Indiana is particularly hard.
well, and I say that because there'll be lots. We'll get into it for lots of reasons, but the data behind that is pretty rock solid. Indiana currently ranks 40th in the nation when it comes to happiness. Which, whenever I say that, people go, "Yeah, that tracks." And we are the
I
10th.
blame the weather.
Yeah, or lack of sunshine. And we are also considered the 10th most stressful place to work. So between those two, that's a dumpster fire, right? So I'm a gratitude and happiness researcher with a special focus on the workplace, and Kris is a laughter yoga leader. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But we've been bouncing around
Sure.
ways to change that. Like, you can bitch about it all day long, but what are you doing to make a difference in the spaces and make them less shitty? And it just so happens that March 20th is the International Day of Happiness. And so it was a perfect opportunity to do something about it. So we're hosting this half-day conference really all about that. How can we create space for more happiness, more gratitude, just more fun, uplifting, soul feeding fun in our world? And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to really dive into that topic and have some fun on that day.
Hell
And-
yeah.
Will there be like vendors there? Or are there people with booth space? Like,
No, actually,
explain the event to me.
so
What
this is
will
our
it look
first
like?
year. So we are trying things a little bit different. So our venue is small, so we'll talk about that as well, but we're kind of limited in how much space we can cram people into. So the structure is we'll have hopefully a couple of local authors there to promote their work on happiness and gratitude or uplifting thinking. We're going to do a workshop on ways to increase the amount of gratitude and happiness in your life. We are going to do a laughter yoga session, and we're going to have space for people just to connect with other like-minded people who are thinking about this topic. Like, how can I, as a human, make space for more good stuff amongst all of the crap in my life? So we'll have that networking opportunity as well.
So tell me, when you say, how can we do that? What are some things that you would go into then that do that?
One of in my experience, one of the best ways that we can offset the trash in our life is to focus on the positive stuff. And a really easy way to do that is gratitude. I'm obviously a gratitude researcher, so I'm biased on this topic. And the data is strong. When we experience appreciation, whether we are ourselves appreciating somebody else or when we're on the receiving end of that, it feels good. We are biologically wired to feel better when we feel like we are a productive member of something. So we'll talk about ways to experience gratitude. One of the things that I think is so important to understand about gratitude is, well, there are two things. One is it has to be authentic, right? I think we've all had that asshole boss who like gave you the thank you card that was completely sterile and didn't mean anything.
Sure.
That, or who just said, or like I'm a veteran, right? And people say, thank you for your service, while simultaneously voting for politicians who make it harder to be a veteran or don't support our military. So when gratitude is inauthentic, it's actually really toxic and makes us feel shittier. But finding ways to experience gratitude that is intentional and that is specific enough to mean something to us has a ridiculous amount of power in our brain. And we're kind of, in our current cultural environment, trained away from it. And especially here in the Midwest, we have that like humble brag mindset where we're not supposed to, if we're not supposed to accept that. If somebody says thank you to us, we often will deflect it like, oh, it was nothing, or I got it for free, or well, it kind of wasn't my best work or whatever. So we'll talk about ways to stop doing those things and instead create more of a mindset of both finding those moments of appreciation, because there are literally limitless of those available every single day, and to make those connections between other people personal, because isolation is a really big problem for us. I mean, we are very lucky right now, for example, to be sitting in a room with other people, but isolation, and it wasn't just the last couple of years, as a culture, we've gotten more and more isolated from others, and the side effect of that has gotten us to where we are today, which is 40th in the nation for happiness and the 10th most stressful place to work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So would you say that a lot of your message is geared towards leadership of towards management and leadership within companies?
No. I wish that it was a common topic within leadership. And that is something that I pursue. And as a career, that's something I focus on. Finding ways to help people who are in leadership roles do a better job in these spaces is really powerful. And I will say that in this time and space, that's a hard sell, right? So like I'm a certified chief happiness officer. That's an actual training module that I went through. I learned the science of what creates happiness in the workplace, what helps us as humans feel more happiness, whatever that means for us. But when I brought that back to the States, first of all, I had to go to Europe to get that certification because it doesn't exist in America. And when I brought it back to the Midwest, I was laughed out of the room. Like, we don't need happiness at work. We give you a paycheck. That should be good enough.
Now, when you say laughed out of the room, what room?
At the time, I was working for a multinational corporation who literally sent me to that training for professional development. But when I brought those learnings back, the senior leadership in that organization were not receptive to the concepts. They had a hard time connecting that if their employees were in a better headspace, they would be a more profitable company, because all they were focused on was counting the beans in the magic bucket.
And do you feel like that's, I mean, in general, corporate, when you're dealing with the corporate world, and so I think that's where things like this could really value the corporate world.
I think there's a need for it. And it's interesting because since I put myself out there on, on the interwebs as a happiness in the workplace advocate, a lot of people do reach out to have those kinds of conversations. Leaders need these skills. Then what we're really talking about are interpersonal skills that are not just how to read a balance sheet, right? How do you interact with the people that make your company more money? It's not a one or the other. It's recognizing the symbiotic nature of those relationships and cultivating healthier landscapes for people. So there's absolutely a need for it. And I think we're seeing a shift in that mindset as companies acknowledge things like the Great Resignation or quiet quitting or whatever. They're starting to recognize that the way they've done things,
Can you
go to hell, Henry Ford, right?
Can you explain those two terms that you just dropped there?
Sure.
You might want to move your mic up close to your face. There we
Is
go.
that better?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry, I don't
You're
mean to
fine.
stop
No,
your
you're
flow, but you mentioned two
Mhm.
things right there that I'm not 100% sure
Happy
what
to.
that means.
Unintended. So the Great Resignation was this wave that happened during the pandemic when people said, holy shit, I hate my job. I hate what I'm doing. I hate everything about this place. This is killing my soul. And people were leaving their jobs, like just quitting in droves. And
But do you feel like that's also because they were being encouraged to by their employers? Because I remember for my experience where I was working, they came at us at the, kind of onset of the pandemic and said, if we will also, they were passing things to where it's like, you're going to make more sitting at home, collecting unemployment, sitting this thing out, than you will continue to work. And so, and I don't know if that's where a place where that's my personal experience. I chose to stay working because I was afraid if I took the layoff, then I would never be brought back. And I had, 6 years in at that point. So it's like, no, I'm going to work through it and hold my, anyway. I'm sorry.
That's a really good question. I think that experience happened in the first part of the pandemic when companies are trying to figure out their life and how to navigate this weird unknown environment and just cut their losses, right?
Mhm.
And so that happened, and people chose to do whatever they were going to do in that 6 months or so period when companies were trying to normalize or stabilize in the panic space.
Mhm.
And then about a year later, when everything had kind of the initial dust had settled and we were all still locked in our houses, people were realizing that these jobs that they had were, if they still had jobs, were deeply unfulfilling. And in the void of the external validation of being dragged into the office and getting the, annual thank you for your next year of service rewards, people were really thinking about what it meant to live a life that meant something. We also were faced with tremendous amounts of loss and change and chaos, which stripped us back to kind of more of a core level of who we were. And we had the space for most of us to think about who we wanted to be. And people didn't want the status quo. And so they really were quitting. And right, companies were struggling. And so employees had a lot more power in that dynamic, and they used it.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that was quiet quitting, or that was the Great Resignation. That shifted the landscape of the workplace tremendously. Quiet quitting is a different concept. So quiet quitting is when somebody keeps their job but starts to scale back on all of the extra stuff that they have been doing without getting compensated for it, right? Like maybe you run a committee for volunteers, or maybe you donate your time to whatever special interest the organization has, or you pick up extra responsibilities that aren't part of your job description and you don't get a raise for. And they were like, why am I doing all of this unpaid labor for this company that doesn't give a shit about
Sure.
me, right? And so people started gradually scaling back to just the job description,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
there are whole industries that are built on the concept that people will do a ton of free labor. I mean, education, everybody who's ever been a teacher knows that there's a shit ton of extra work that's not part of your job that you do, that's unpaid. And nursing is a great example of this too. Nurses put in a ridiculous amount of extra work that's not nursing jobs, not nursing work. They take out the trash and they fix equipment and they run for meals. And so there are these things that we've all sort of organically added to our plate that have allowed companies to not staff appropriately or whatever, but aren't serving us in any way, shape, or form. And I think we've all had that experience where you do all this extra work thinking, okay, it's time for my end of year bonus. They're going to be so happy. And they're like, well, you did okay. So with the lack of appreciation, right? To take it back full circle, with the lack of appreciation, people said, screw that. I'm not going to do that anymore. And they just started scaling back to just the job, just the facts, man.
Mhm. Mhm. I get that. And that really resonates with my experience because I had a job and I had, by the end of the day, been there about 8 years, going on 9, and was let go pretty unceremoniously. And I don't want to like really go into the details of that, but uh, after all of the time there and whatnot, it was kind of a shot. And then I got a job where it's a small crew. I work with the owner every day and two other individuals that are like the designers and whatnot. And I'm kind of the inside sales rep. And I love it. And when I feel like my place in the world is definitely like when I can work in a small team. I feel like in the corporate world and whatnot, I'm just too blunt and things like that, a little rough around the edges. Uh, I've a couple different times gotten in trouble for cussing, and I'm like, there's a difference when you're cussing at somebody or cussing to somebody. And
Absolutely.
so, there's a difference between you fucking just did this and these fucking things are messed up. And
Absolutely.
so I don't know, but I'm a little rough around the edges sometimes when it comes to things like that. And so if working in a small environment where you really get to know the people you work with well, and our boss shows us a lot of gratitude. So when you talk about what you do on a daily basis with this outside of this event that you're throwing, uh like what is it that this then like what does this look like in your daily life?
Usually it looks like working with smaller teams on these kinds of skills, right? So how, like you just described, how do we create that environment where the people who are working together on a project or a team or in a unit can mesh together, whether they're all sitting in the same office or they are working remotely but plugging into Zoom or Slack or whatever, to have more positive experiences. The challenge that most companies are facing right now is people are still quitting, right? Or
Mhm.
or they're not performing at a level that the company needs, and that's a complicated algorithm, right? But the reason is, as you just beautifully gave a case study of, people really need just two things to like how they're spending their time at work. And one is, do I see that the work I'm doing matters? Nobody wants to do mindless shit that's useless.
Right.
That makes us all crazy. Now, how we individually define work that matters takes a zillion different shapes. But if you can answer that question, does my work matter in the positive, then you're in a better space than somebody who doesn't feel that way.
Sure.
And the other bigger piece of the puzzle, and this is true for actually job or life satisfaction, is, do I have decent relationships with the people I'm spending time with?
Mhm.
And that's it. I mean, those two things are the secret sauce to job and life happiness. Getting there is complicated and often made more complicated by a lot of the arbitrary structures we have built, whether it's around relationship structures or work rules or societal expectations or whatever. But if you can say that the energy you're spending is valuable to you, the outcomes are valuable, and the people you're doing it with you like, you're in. You're
Yeah.
golden.
And I think that that is important. And uh, as in my life, the chance that I get to be a leader is in my band Tight Like a Tiger. Uh, and I've always had to kind of work with the egos of artists and musicians, in their own right, and to get them to kind of accept that at the end of the day, there's three of us and we're equal, but I'm the leader at the end of the day. So that's like a 1.25 vote on a lot of stuff.
Sure.
So, what would you say to people that are trying to work outside of an actual job, a 9 to 5, and how that they could apply this to something like, because a lot of our viewers are going to be people that are artists and band members. How can they apply this to working with other people out? Get where I'm going with that.
Absolutely. I think part of it is reframing how you think about doing work. The sort of dominant narrative around work is going into an office and sitting with people and doing whatever checklist of things. But that doesn't matter when it comes to finding more satisfaction in your day. You can have quality relationships with your clients. You can have them with your customers. You can have them. You can have a rock solid friendship with the barista where you stop and get your latte every morning. The specific framework in which that relationship happens doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. It just matters that that relationship that you're forming is healthy for both parties involved and that it serves your needs in the space. I mean, we even see it with pets, right? Like there's a reason why pets are called companion animals. They provide us a relationship. And the other thing about relationships that's so important that people who don't have that like pre-programmed formal relationship structure of like a boss and coworkers is you have to work at it. You don't get to just have a friend. It's not like Cinderella happily ever after. Now we're friends. Yay, it's good forever. That doesn't work. Maybe that relationship isn't meant to last for the rest of eternity. Maybe that relationship is, but either way, for the duration of its existence, you have to invest. Everybody involved has to invest in that relationship. It's like having a house plant. If you never water it, the damn thing's going to die.
Oh yeah, I'm bad about that.
And if that's true for you, then either don't have a whole bunch of if you don't feel like you are skillful in and don't want to be skillful in nurturing those connections, then be intentional. Don't force yourself into a space where you have to nurture a Rolodex or contacts list of 1,000 people. If you don't have the bandwidth for that or you don't like to do that, then don't. Find the one or two that are meaningful for you in this moment and dig in deep on those spaces. I mean, not everybody is meant to have an entire house full of greenery. Not everybody is meant to have 6 romantic partners. Not everybody is meant to have 27 professional, networking relationships.
13 sports cars.
I mean, unless they are. And if
I
you
want 13 sports cars.
So how does a person decipher? Because that sounds to me like that can lead into the conversation of distinguishing what we need versus what we want. And on some level, do you feel, because a lot of what I get a little bit of from the gratitude and whatnot and the happiness, it does remind me of like the law of attraction.
Mhm.
And so I think that at least that would resonate within that realm. And so then I think about what is how does a person make that relevant to their lives without being I'm now living in a pipe dream world?
So I am not personally a person who is super woo woo, right? Like I like the concept of the law of attraction, but the way I interpret that is our brain has this little nubbin in it called the reticular activating system, whose whole job is to see patterns and figure out shit for us. But it's only going to figure out the shit that we tell it to figure out. So, how are you framing it, right? Are you framing it in a way that is manageable? Like, are you saying you want to fly with your own wings to the moon? Okay, that's a pretty big expectation to set. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I don't know how you get there from where you are right now. So, are you creating desires for yourself that are actually doable so you can experience some success, or are you creating a space where you're always going to fail? The brain is we as humans are so good at picking up patterns, and we are so good at picking up patterns that are incomplete data sets of what's going on in our world. So if I say to you, hey Jed, notice how many stop signs there are in your neighborhood, all of a sudden you're going to count and be like, holy shit, there's so many stop signs in this neighborhood.
Too many.
You probably never even thought about it before, but now your brain is focused on the problem of figuring out how many damn stop signs there are and why they're in your way, right? So I believe in the power of things like positive affirmations and goal setting and mantras, because they give us an anchor point to creating the things that we're going to want to see. Because current research says that the human brain is processing like 34 gigabytes of information every single day. That's a ton of stuff to sift through. The truth is, we're discarding most of that stuff because it doesn't seem relevant to the problem that we're working on right now. whatever we've defined that as. So make sure you're picking the right problems to focus on, the right challenges, the right opportunities, the right goals to focus on. I mean, if you want to be miserable, your brain will make it happen. No problem. And I am
100%.
and I'm not even negating things like clinical depression or chemical imbalances. Like those are real too. And I'm
Mhm.
not saying that gratitude or happiness or Pollyanna smile shit can fix all of that, but you can influence the thing. And one of the biggest things I see for people, whether they are people leaders or just people, is they feel like the world is out of control. Anybody who's watched the news, listened to radio, or opened their eyes today recognizes that there is a ton of stuff going on in the world that's really heavy, hard stuff. Probably always has been. We just didn't know about it. But we get in this like panic response, and our brain shuts off the creative thinking part and just goes into survival mode. We're like a bunch of armadillos balled up and like bouncing off each other, trying to avoid getting kicked in the face.
Can I speak on that before you go
Yeah,
too
of
far
course.
away from it? Because I can remember a moment, and I really am not a political person now, and I have very much a kind of I remember when I was young, it seemed like the kind of thing that was a little more private and people weren't getting as worked up about political parties and stuff. And maybe that is me being young and not understanding what the adults are actually talking about and doing. Maybe that's nostalgic for me.
Dude,
But
5-6 more years, dude,
know.
you'll be ready.
So,
You know?
but I will say that this is just my personal experience, and I'm always just like, oh God, people are gonna tear me up or something. So I was very much about Bernie Sanders, and not I really was not a big fan of Hillary Clinton. And so this election, and I had always voted basically along those lines since I was old enough to vote and whatnot. And so then I felt like as I watched the primary kind of thing play out, and I saw how these like super votes were involved and how it didn't seem to actually matter uh, at the end of the day who you voted for, because there were going to be super votes for all these. And I think that is actually like a little bit more of a Democrat thing than a Republican. But at any rate,
That's how
Hillary,
they win.
Hillary ends up getting the nomination there, and it's Hillary and Trump. And am I remembering this right?
Mhm.
Because okay.
Yeah. That's the way. That's the way it happened.
So far, we're
And so I was really pretty
Talking about the peanut
dejected
gallery.
in the first place. And I felt like by voting for him, because just the idea of Trump was beyond me. It was, and especially as everything that was playing out and all these things being said, I'm just like, how can this play out well? I don't, but was no fan of Hillary Clinton either. And so I ended up like going to the poll that
They
day.
all kind of suck.
To me, voting for the lesser of two evils in my mind. And so that was a bit of just like but still did it. And then when Trump won that election, am I still right with it was him beating Hillary in this
Yeah.
election, right? Okay. So I was so scared and worked up, and I was like, this guy's going to get us into World War III. Here we go. He's just such a wild card. And I was so nervous about it, and it was affecting my like work life even. And so I'm sorry, long-winded way to get into a kind of a concept I came up with, because I'm
The
sitting at
wolf
work.
concept, right? The wolf concept.
No,
I know exactly what you're talking
But
about. Turn on the TV.
it's called Bubble Up.
wolf.
I noticed, I was like, there's this outside world that I feel very dejected by, and I don't understand the way that it works, and I don't feel like it represents me. And so, and a lot of people, this is probably what would get me maybe some heat, is I got to the point where I said it doesn't seem to matter who you vote for. There's just like these agendas that are playing out, and both sides are kind of just the flip sides of a coin. That I don't think I choose a side on that coin that I feel like fully can represent the
And
way
the
I
reason you
feel.
feel that way,
And
brother,
so I, when I
it's
say
pretty
this system
simple.
doesn't represent me, I can't remember the last
can't get
time that I
over
was like, thank God the government, took care of this. And man, we're really so much better off because the government did this to help us all out. And I really feel like, oh, about it, because I feel like, I don't know, more often than not, there's just something shady behind it. God,
Yeah, but then all of
I
a sudden we
shouldn't
were able
go.
to get married. So
And things do
so
change
things, yes,
that are for the positive,
yes.
don't get me wrong, but then at the end of the day, to me, do I say yay for that, just yay for that, or do I say, why was it in somebody else's power to tell you no in the first place? Because that bothers me. That's the system that we live in, is that there are people, when it comes to things that are very much between two people that love each other, why is there a entity above you that can tell you no? I don't agree with that. I don't think that should be within the power of their responsibility. Should be to be dealing with foreign entities and controlling the money that's coming into things that need to be taken care of. I don't know.
Absolutely. And less control about what goes on in people's
I
homes.
think that so to me, when I feel like a system doesn't represent me, then it's like my vote is no vote.
Well, okay. And this is what I was
And
going
I
to
bubbled
say.
up. Let me finish the story real quick.
Sure,
I'm
man.
sorry. But
45
at that
minutes.
point, I realized there is this world that comes in through the TV that is very much, aimed at controlling a narrative. And you're going to find the narrative, and it's going to be something for some reason, and you agree with it. And now they're going to like just pump you militantly about this, and everybody else is evil and wrong. And I find in my day-to-day life, that is not the world I live in. That the people I interact with at work, at the gas station, at the grocery store, I can do that. And we are all trying our best to get along with each other. I do not have conflicts with people in day-to-day life on any sort of, and I'm also out going to shows, going around the punks, going around people that maybe other people would say, well, there's probably, and I never have these problems in day-to-day life. So I was like, maybe if we focus on what's real and bubble up against this outside world that's just coming at us from the box, from our technology, and we bubble up and we live in society in the moment, uh, and just don't pay attention to any of it any more than can kind of break through your bubble and conversation with people and shit. So when I learn about news, it's actually from conversations like this. That's my, and so I'm ignorant to a lot of things and a lot of news stories and whatnot, because I find like that I don't need that in my bubble. It's negativity. It's always negativity. But God, I do love murder mysteries and horror movies and
Yeah.
shit. That's I guess that, the negative polarity does have to reject somewhere.
We say that we can't change the whole world. We can't change the world. All we can do is affect our little part of it. And so we can try and change our little part of the world. If we all do that, globally, we can change the world.
Can I give you a recent example that I think is really like maybe fitting into
Please
this
do.
conversation? Because, and it's the small things to me a lot of the times. And it's like I go to the same gas station once, if not twice a day down the road. And a lot of times I get like the same item, and it's cigarettes. And so they like know, and they'll be setting them on the counter as I walk. Do you want one? Do you want two? Because that's really the only variable at any rate. And it's been the same people for a year and a half. And I have just, even if I'm having a bad day and I heard somebody else talk about this, it's like it is my responsibility to be making my interactions with other people, for me to make those a good experience, as even in just passing on, to be happy. And so even if I have something going on, when I walk into that gas station, it's like, hey, how's it going? Yeah, 1, 2, smile. And, so at any rate, where I'm going with this is that one day it's a couple that are married, and they, so I would be bumping into them a lot. And I don't think I realized that they were married. But they were like, yeah, we're getting ready to quit. And I'm like, ah. And they're like, well, there's just all this going on, and we're not being treated fairly here, and we need to be making more money. We're students, etc. And they were like, where do you work? And I know, like, where I work is not, but I was like, but in my line of work, there are companies that we are doing like brochures and things that are like featuring, we're hiring. And I was like, a couple of days later, I came in and I had remembered them and brought a brochure from one of these places. I was like, hey, here's like a warehouse job. Everything looks pretty good. Like, check it out. But to me, that is like when you're trying to spread happiness, and it's a small thing, and it's showing people, like, the people that can remember before I walk in, and as soon as I walk in, the cigarettes that I'm going to ask for, and showing some gratitude, and like, hey, I hate that you would leave here, because I love you guys, but here's this to maybe help you, because obviously, I don't know.
They made you feel seen. They saw you. They knew you.
Yeah.
They saw you. They recognized that it was you coming, and they made you feel seen and part of something, even if it was only for that brief interaction.
And you talked about like the barista at the store, and
Mhm.
how you kind of spread that in your day-to-day life with people. What are some habits you think that somebody could avoid when it comes to that? It's easy, I guess, to me a lot of the times to say, well, here's what you do, and to lay out some things like that. What are some things that you think people do in their day-to-day lives that they shouldn't?
I think being on autopilot is really dangerous. And I say that with the full recognition that for a lot of our life, we have to be just working off of muscle memory. I mean,
Oh,
with that
yeah.
34 gigabytes of stuff we're processing, I can't be thinking about which exact rock in the road I'm going to drive over, right?
Mhm.
But creating spaces for more intentional interactions changes everything, because there will be times when, like, I get accused of this all the time. Oh, you're a happiness advocate. You just want us all to be happy all the time. No,
What's wrong with that?
right? Well, but it's not real, right? Like if your mom gets sick or your cat gets hit by a car or whatever,
Sure.
like there are seasons of life that are hard. What I mean,
Mhm.
I think having an awareness of what emotional reactions are is super helpful. I don't think people spend a lot of time thinking about that kind of stuff, but I'm a nerd. So all emotions really are is us interpreting the space that we're in, physical, mental, emotional, whatever. All those things play into it. And the emotions we have, I mean, I love that movie, Inside Out, where it has the little emotions at the control board, right?
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a great representation of how that space in our head really works, because they're just telling us what's going on. There's no like moral value to being happy or angry or scared or whatever. Those things are just reactions. So I like to say that happiness shouldn't be the goal. It's how you measure how things are going.
Mhm.
If I say, are you happy? And you say yes or no, that tells you something about the space. And maybe you shouldn't be happy right now. Like if you're dealing with something super
Sure.
heavy, and like
Absolutely.
I know a person who was so determined to be perceived as a positive person that like their mom passed away and they were still walking through life smiling and whistling, and they were not happy that their mom died, right?
Do you
They
feel
were,
like that's toxic in a way?
I think that when we talk about toxic positivity, that's what
Mhm.
it is. But I don't think that genuine positivity can be toxic, but that fake shit absolutely is. It's like fake gratitude. It's actually, or it's like sarcasm. Those things are really abrasive, and they're lies that we're telling ourselves. So if you're thinking about your emotions as gauges for what's going on, that helps. But you have to be aware of what they are before you can use them as a diagnostic tool for what's going on in your world, And what happens is somebody will like read an article or watch a podcast or see a Forbes thing or something, and they'll learn like the technique for perfection, whatever that thing is, and they'll do that not having any fucking clue how that thing is supposed to work.
I actually know exactly what it takes to get to perfection, and that's chaos.
You know what?
And you're absolutely right.
Can I interject for 1 second? I feel like this is just super hot.
I
It's
think
like,
the glasses are
in your
good.
guys'
Yeah.
ears when I talk.
Oh, I thought you were talking about your sunglasses. Yeah, dude, they look hot, dude. They're good. look good on you. Good job.
I'm not too loud.
No, you're not.
No, but
Sorry.
also,
The
you
button
don't
guy.
understand technology.
The button guy.
Yeah.
I don't think we've mentioned the button guy today.
Oh yeah, let's
Shep.
throw it out there. Hey,
We gotta give the occasional shout out to
Yeah,
our
of course.
sponsor, or we get in
absolutely.
trouble.
I think that
You
a
know.
lot of what you're talking about is a lot of the stuff that I try to kind of live and die by, and that's like, it's not a happy thing, it's a thought thing, you know.
Being thoughtful. Is that what you mean by that?
No, if your goal is to be happy in life, then it starts with your thoughts. And when I'm at work and I have all this stuff to do, I could be like, man, how am I going to get all this stuff done? Or I could be like, man, good, I got stuff to keep busy.
Yeah.
It's all about your thought.
That.
The
It
story you
starts
tell
with that.
yourself about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, but I was saying that's kind of my kind of philosophy or whatever. Positive energy activates constant elevation, and it really, like, to dumb that down, whatever you do in life, make sure it brings you peace, that you enjoy it. That's why I do these podcasts, because I enjoy it.
I think maybe peace is not a word I would always use to
It's in the
describe
thoughts, though.
the
How about
things
It's the
that
thought,
we do.
how you look at things. Yeah.
Contentment.
Because there's also a thing about being challenged that I think people respond to. And I feel like when, our hobbies, like playing in a band or something, there's actually a challenge to that is, while it is very gratifying, don't get me wrong, but part of the gratification is rising to the challenge of playing tight, having a good show and whatnot, so that living on a certain razor's edge of things is part of what makes me happy. So, I don't know. Peace is a thing at home I very much search for. And I want to have like that peaceful home life that then on game day, when we come to do a podcast, or when we go, even in practicing and trying to get new songs down, or these things where you're sharpening and you're working, and it's something we're passionate about. And it's hard sometimes to then take that into your work life and have that same passion for it. Do you think there's a place there that you could say how you look at these things? Because maybe quitting your job isn't the best thing because it doesn't make you happy.
The balance.
Because you have responsibilities, you have things. So, just quitting your job and focusing on a hobby might not be the answer, right?
Right.
And so how does a person at their job take what you're saying and maybe not hate their job so much?
Well, I think a lot of it is to what Shep was saying. There's some mindset there that really does make a difference. And one of the really easy ways I saw was to take your to-do list and make it a to-da list, right? So
Oh, I like that.
don't necessarily, and like when you're writing the stuff down on the list or putting it in your Outlook or whatever, the things you got to accomplish, that process might feel overwhelming. But every time you check something off, your brain gets a little burst of dopamine, which is going to feel good for sure, right? So if you flip the script so that it's a celebration when you accomplish something as opposed to a drudge when you're adding shit to the list, that's a great, it's just a paradigm shift, right? You're reframing the experience to one that serves you as opposed to one that sucks your soul out.
Sure.
So that's one way you can do it. I think also finding ways to incorporate the things that matter to you, but you have to know what matters to you. And one of the coolest experiences I had was working with a bunch of undergraduate college students on their personal values, because it's shitty to work for a company whose actual values, not the shit on the wall, but the actual stuff that they live into, rub you raw, right? And you can't fix that if you don't know which way to twist, right? So you have to understand, like, who am I, or who do I want to be? What's important to me in life? I think you're like what you described with being a performer, right? And there's balance there that's super important too. But like, if finding challenges to overcome is energizing for you, then that's a value. But if you don't know that and you go into your job as like a mainstream accountant, you're probably going to be super fucking unhappy. If you're an accountant, you're probably unhappy anyway, statistically. But
Yeah.
truthfully, it's the least happiest job.
It's in the numbers.
It's in the
Yeah.
numbers, you know.
Can I say something there? Because I think it will also speak to mindset. Because the job I had before was actually very redundant and the same thing. I was a clerk, and I had, just this really kind of simple responsibility. And I mean, the challenges were more about the playground politics within the workplace for me, honestly. But and
Sounds like a toxic
I
work
could
environment.
do this. I could do this job in my sleep. When you talk about that muscle memory thing, and I stuck with that for 8.5 years, because I was very comfortable
It's
in
safe,
that
right?
rut. And so to say that again, trying to look back, because even if things ended poorly, like it was overall, like there were a lot of positive experiences for me along the way that I try to also not forget about and to be thankful for. And then the learning experiences that came with some of the other things. And one of those things was getting too comfortable sometimes, I think, is a thing I took from that.
But if that's your value, if it's important to you to have peace in your life, or to have and values can change over time. I think that's an important thing too, right? But in that space of your life, if it's like when I had kids at home, my kids are all grown now. Hallelujah. But when they were little, it was a basic like prime directive to keep the kids alive to adulthood. That's my whole job as a parent, right? So I stuck out a lot of stuff that was not great for my soul because I had to keep the lights on and keep the kids fed. My
Right.
values, my needs
Right.
in that moment were different than they are now. We have more flexibility now. I have more appetite for risk now because
Mhm.
the calculation is
And you
different,
talked about the
right?
seasons of life, right? And that's
Absolutely.
an important key, I think, for people to keep in mind as they weigh the changes and the waves in their lives, and when to maybe take a risk and when not to, right?
Well, and the I think one of the saddest things is that organisms, not just people, we are not designed to make big changes unless we are super uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Why would we? That's
Right.
the whole freaking
You're forced
point,
into
is
that.
like to find that
Mhm.
homeostasis point. I mean, biologically, it's so we stay alive long enough to pass on our genes to the next level. So that's like a very low level driver, right? But like at a more enlightened level, I don't want to spend my life doing nothing, right?
Right.
So what's important in this space, and how do I find the ways that let me do the things that are important to me? Like for me, being a consultant is super risky, but it's also super fun because I get to talk to tons of people in tons of different spaces.
Mhm.
If I am embedded with one organization, even if it has 50,000 employees, that's one tiny population of humans I can interact with.
Sure.
So, right. So I like having health insurance, but I also really like talking to lots of people about these topics and planting these seeds lots of places. So for
Mhm.
me, that space makes more sense. I just think if we could find a way, and this is something I have these conversations a lot, if we can find ways to make the changes that get us closer to where we want to be today, recognizing that that will evolve, without it having to be so fucking traumatic that we need therapy for the rest of our lives to deal with the shitty work environment or whatever it was that drove us to that space. I mean, most people don't end relationships until they're so bad that they'd rather live in their car than stay in that situation. Maybe we could get to that decision point a little faster, right? And avoid just a little bit of the trauma that we then usually carry with us for the rest of our lives. So that's, I think, a really valuable skill. So I guess it doesn't have to suck so bad before you make a better decision point. part of it not sucking so bad is finding the ways to sand off those rough edges. So if there's something about your job that you just loathe, maybe have a chat with your boss and be like, data entry is killing my soul. We've got some interns. Can I have one of them do some of this data entry so I can focus more on drafting strategy ideas for the next round of planning? I mean, what are the things that matter to you? What do you want to do? How do you make those opportunities happen?
And I think that that's an important thing that you did there, because you can't just go and bitch that you hate what you're doing.
You can, but
Well, I mean,
I can
okay,
relate to this
but
subject.
do you not feel like it's
Yeah.
You need to then also say, I would like to, my skills
Mhm.
are I could be doing this.
Yeah.
I think it's important, because I think a lot of times people just get in the I hate this.
And they're afraid that they can't make it. I think there's this perception, especially in the workplace, that jobs are like
Oh.
tightly bound into some kind of job description or some secret a system somewhere, and they're usually not. Most jobs and most companies, like, job descriptions are pulled out of some database as a general starting point,
Mhm.
but the flexibility is almost always there. Of course, it depends on your boss and how flexible they are in their thinking. That can be a whole challenge unto itself, but I think having the courage to go up and have that crucial conversation with the people who can make the things happen is really valuable.
Mhm.
Do a little bit of reading on how things are going in other places. Ask your friends who are doing similar jobs, or like go on LinkedIn and browse around some of the discussion boards around similar spaces. What are those? And ask people questions. What do you do in your world? What do you love about it? Find out what the possibilities are.
I feel like people, one thing that has helped me along the way is understanding from job to job. And, once I was in my mid 20s, it was kind of like settling down and trying to hold jobs much longer in
Mhm.
that job. But being a teenager in that point, it was, sometimes week to week,
Mhm.
I would be changing out jobs I mean, at that point, I was absolutely obsessed with playing music, and that was the only thing
Right.
that actually mattered to me was my band, and I was, just so the jobs and stuff just did not really matter in that, like, kind of spiritual way at all yet. And but I guess I think now, and maybe it's because of things like LinkedIn, and maybe it's because people are more aware of different opportunities that are out there and how to maybe navigate. But I feel like there is a lot of turnover, and so there is clearly a lot of people that, and maybe when I say clearly, this is my perception, is that there are a lot of people, especially younger people, that are jumping from job to job pretty
They have
frequently.
to.
They're finding themselves in new workplaces on a frequent basis. And so to me, it's like picking up and realizing what your transferable skills are that you are picking up from job to job can really be key to eventually, like, kind of navigating towards something that when you were starting out, it wouldn't have been on your radar as something, but now you've realized, like, I was really good at actually, like, dealing with customers in this way,
Yes.
or, whatever. And so you pick up those transferable skills. And then when you're working, on getting a job, when you can tell somebody, hey, this job title that you have is not something I can sit here and tell you, like, I even know for sure what you'll have me do. But I can tell you from what it says, here are transferable skills that
Mhm.
I'm bringing to the table. And at any rate, I'm sorry if
Well,
I'm
no, I
like
think that's
going on about that,
really
but I think that
valuable.
is something as you get
Mhm.
and you do start wanting to, like, the idea of, like, I want to be somewhere and not jump because I need to start building stability. And sometimes that challenge of being stable nowadays, I think, is harder and harder with the way the corporate world and whatnot works.
I don't think you
But
can be stable anymore because of the framework. Companies have created an environment where they financially benefit if you stay longer because they're going to pay you less in your annual raise than they're going to pay
mhm,
to replace you with a new person.
mhm,
So it is not financially feasible for most people, or wise for most people, to stay with the same company for 20 years, you're going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars behind the person who jumps from job to job. And that's just a reality of the current job market. So I think companies have shot themselves in the foot when it comes to creating a landscape that lends itself to job hopping, for one thing, just from a money perspective. And money doesn't buy happiness,
It
but
makes
it does pay the bills.
absolutely the opposite of logical sense,
It's
right?
completely
And when you
insane.
start working in the world, you think in your mind, in a perfect world, the longer I stick with a place and show my loyalty
Yeah.
and my ability to bust ass and get the job done that they want me to do,
They'll
and
love
have a good,
me.
that I will grow with this company, and they will take
Nah.
care of me, right?
Not
Yeah.
anymore.
That
Not
is
anymore.
a
20,
that's just
21
a
years of
romantic
service, and they
way.
just call you.
It does not
and
work
give you
that way,
severance
right?
package.
If you're lucky.
No, and there's that trickle up theory too,
Actually,
because
that's what
while
happened to
you're
me, but-
transferring, so are your bosses also transferring. So that same person that you were working hard for isn't there anymore. They've
Mm.
gone and moved on. Now it's
Mhm.
some other guy who doesn't know you've been busting your ass for the last 6 years.
And-
He only sees that you've been there. So he doesn't care. He has no connection with you. So
Mhm.
even though you've busted your ass for the company, the actual face of the company has probably changed 4 or 5 times over.
Mhm. Oh, that's
A billion
definitely
percent,
something
yeah.
a lot of people would deal with. If
I've
they're
been with my job for
staying
3 years,
someplace.
and we've had 3 different owners.
Exactly.
Exactly.
But I love it there.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing.
My favorite
necessarily.
part about it is the non-toxic atmosphere. I
That's
actually
perfect.
told my boss the other day, I was like, I have to say, man, this is a pretty good place to work, and it all starts with the fact that it's not toxic in here.
That's a
Yeah.
good starting point.
It's sad that that's the bar.
Oh, that's the bar. I have a pretty good understanding of like energy in the workplace, and I used to manage people and manage store. I didn't manage people. I managed stores,
Mhm.
but yeah, God, man.
Well, and when you
I had
say
to fire people just because they were like, imagine having a general manager of a foods, like, like a fast food restaurant or a store, that is the person that spreads the rumors and starts the bickering.
Oh.
Yeah, I've seen it. Ooh,
Yeah.
woof. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I think the other thing is that companies have done a trash job of understanding that most people get really bored doing the same thing for 25 years. Not
Mhm.
everybody. Some people want to find that one thing that they're great at and they want to stick with it and do nothing. But like, I had a coworker who loved data entry, and I would give her all my stuff to do because I
Mhm.
hate data entry, but she was like a pig in shit. Like, yes,
Yeah.
I'll enter
Hell
numbers
yeah.
all day long. I'm like, oh, you go, girl. But they don't seem to, I don't know why it is. Companies have a hard time figuring out how to like build growth into their people. They'll grow strategy growth plans for their business, but not for their fucking people who make the business possible. And not everybody should become a manager. Not everybody is good at leading other people. Like, if I hear one more manager say they're throwing a pizza party, I'm probably going to have an aneurysm, right? I mean, companies most companies haven't created a career path for people who don't want to be people leaders, and becoming widget manufacturer level 3 and capping out
Right.
your salary because that's how our jobs are banded. Cool, you have just encouraged your people to quit, and maybe that's a good thing because you get fresh blood in. But
Right.
from a psychological perspective, for people who have been told our whole lives that your value as a human is somehow correlated to how many Rolexes you collect from your company for time
Mhm.
and service. I mean,
And
there
the
are,
ability to like retire from a place,
but nobody
comes
has a
into
pension
play
anymore.
Good point.
I mean,
Those whole frameworks don't exist. The mindset still exists, but the frameworks
right.
that supported
That's what
them
I was going
don't.
to say. The mindset
Yeah.
still does exist, like, because people
Because those
think
people are still in
that's
power.
like in their romantic vision
Mhm.
when you're getting into the workplace, like that's how it should work, and that's somewhat how it will work. And then you
It's
get the
not.
rude awakening,
yeah.
especially like,
Well,
you will, if you haven't
You
yet,
will.
if you're watching the show and you're like, no, like I've had the same job, and like you're
Okay.
gonna figure out eventually, like they are not loyal to you. And
But we all want
and
to be
there are
part of
people
something.
hiring, and that's the thing to
Yeah.
me that I think is important when you and it can overcome some of that, is when you feel like you are part of something.
So
And
find
you are
something that's not in
important
the
in the
workplace.
place that you're in.
Something that brings you peace.
Even if it's data entry though,
Mhm.
and like you said, you worked with somebody that was like poured on me because I love doing this shit. To me, if you can find something like that where it's like, this is what makes me feel like I'm important.
Mhm.
And it's not always going to be the most obvious thing. And sometimes you got to, like, when you talk about happiness and the perspective, it's like, look for that in what you do. You know, maybe you hate the idea of this, but if you start thinking about, but I love when I'm doing this part of it,
Yep.
I don't know.
Or it's morally rewarding.
Yeah.
I used to be like CNA work, or the people that take care of your mom in the nursing home. They don't get paid shit,
Mhm.
but they feel like they are contributing to somebody else's life. It's morally rewarding to help these other people. So
Mhm.
you get something from that. There comes a certain job satisfaction from that, knowing that your job has meaning and puts good works out into the world.
Mhm. And I think there's so many different ways that a person can do that. And I
Absolutely.
do think it is a lot of times the balance in life to also do that away from jobs and to have, like, you know, hobbies and passions. And while we get into that, we said something about, was it laughter yoga?
Yeah.
Laughing yoga?
Laughter yoga.
Laughter
That's
yoga.
Kris.
And so can you explain, is that a thing you do professionally, or is this a passion?
No, laughter yoga is a real thing. Laughter yoga is a worldwide real thing since 1995. Just Google it. Just Google it. There's all kinds of health benefits that come from it. I'm not going to go through the whole story, but a man in India named Madan Kataria was doing research on laughter as the best medicine. And it
Okay.
turns out that it is. Again, Google it. There's all kinds of health benefits that come from laughter. And so the
I
main
think that's
principle,
obvious in
yeah,
life, though.
you would think, but it turns out there's a lot of physical benefits that also come from it. On top of the dopamine and the serotonin and the brain soup that we get a lot of physical,
Muscular.
you get the
Okay.
oxygen into your body. It's the yoga part of it is the breathing part of it. So there's a lot of it. So the main part of laughter yoga, though, and the amazing part is that whether you are really laughing or you're just going through the motions, your body doesn't know the difference. You get the same health benefits from just going through the motions. Just treat it like exercise. The exercise is the laughing.
Mhm.
So turns out that laughter is very, very contagious. We say fake it till you make it. Usually it doesn't take more than 15 to 20 seconds of faking it until you very quickly make it
Yeah.
and you start laughing. So it's not meant to be funny. There's no amusement to it.
It's pretty
It's getting
funny.
in touch with your inner child. The child, a child laughs 300 to 400 times a day. Would you like to take a guess on the average adult?
41.
12 to 15 times a day. The average
Wow.
adult laughs 12 to 15 times a
I
day.
think
I
it's
guess
less.
that's why
Yeah.
that's
It may
guess
be
that's
less.
why I'm not an adult,
Right?
because I laugh way more than that.
Well, we all know that. But the shame of part of it is laughter is your body's natural antidepressant. That's where your serotonin comes from. And so there's a lot of research to back that up. And so laughter yoga has been going worldwide since, like I said, 1995. And it's up and down the coast. You can do a laughter yoga, do a search for laughter yoga. In American, there's laughter clubs. There are laughter clubs in every major city across the country. I'm not kidding. When I first moved here 15 years ago, there was a laughter club going on here in Indianapolis. I don't know if they're still, probably
So
not.
what is your, so do you have a class
So in
that you
2005,
teach,
I
or a-
attended training to become a laughter club leader,
Mhm.
which means I learned the spiel that I just gave you. I learned how to do that and some different, it's right, and some of the other stuff that comes with it and how to actually lead a laughter club. So I've actually, I'm a certified laughter yoga leader, and I have been through the training to do that, and I'm pretty good at it. I've been doing it a long time now. I've done it for
Oh, yeah.
holistic healing centers and battered women's groups. And I mean, from coast to coast, I've done laughter yoga in places where I'm going to talk about.
So
I
it's like a
believe in the
freelan-
power
a
of laughter.
freelance thing. There's
It's
not a
I lead you
studio
through,
right now that
Yeah,
you
it's
do
a
work out
freelance
of.
gig.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No, I'm not part of any. There are laughter clubs all over the place, and there are different organizations. I'm sure. I'm not plugged into those. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not plugged in with them, and so I can't
Sure.
really speak to them. But I do know that they exist. I even know there's a phone call that you can call in once a day and join the laughter club through the phone,
Hell
on
yeah.
telephone. Yeah, there's
And is
laughter
that
clubs,
just like where you're listening to laughing itself,
and
or
you are
are there
participating.
actual, like, I mean, because to me, I guess when I think about laughter, I think about comedy, you
Mhm.
know?
But
But
no,
you say, I'm almost picking up that the comedy is not really the thing
you know what
here.
makes people laugh? Even with them sunglasses, you know what makes people laugh? Eye contact. when you look people in the eye and you
Yes.
smile this big old smile, and you can't help but smile along
Eye
and laugh
contact
with
is
you.
When we
super
were
It's
important.
eye
kids.
contact.
Could you
Humor is
imagine like
surprise,
being a person that wears sunglasses everywhere they go all the
right?
time?
Mhm. Or what happened when we
Crazy.
put those
Or
masks on
lazy.
for the last 3 years?
Oh, I hate
Right? All of a
it.
sudden we're
Yeah.
all right. So
Yeah.
so that it became a big thing, even more important. And there's that connection that comes with it too. But mainly for the thing for me about it is the brain hack. You are hacking your brain to produce that serotonin. You're
Mhm.
hacking your brain to get that dopamine going to make yourself happy. Basically, we come in, I'll explain a little bit of what we do. Then we go through a series of laughter exercises that I lead the group through. And the bigger the group, the bigger the exercises, which is why you should come to the event. Huge different things that are all designed to laugh. They're fun to watch, but you can't really just watch. Everybody joins in. So all the
Sure.
laughing going on. And then we breathe because you'll laugh so hard. It really is a workout. You
Mhm.
get all sweaty,
Oh,
you
yeah,
get
I
out of
can
breath. And
imagine.
so the yoga part is the breathing that comes between the laughter exercises. So we do a bunch of that, and I get everybody just stoned on their own serotonin. They get glassy eyed and out of breath and all sweaty, right? And then when we sit down and we go through what's called uncontrolled laughter, like when you were a kid, you sat with your best friends laughing your
Mhm.
ass off for no
That's
reason, right?
That's
That's
exactly
what
what
we
it's
do.
making me think
That's
of.
what
Exactly
we
what it is.
And I
do.
was thinking, is there like a meditation involved
That comes
that
later.
gets to that place? Because some of my favorite memories in life and
What's up,
moments in
Phil?
life are very much like me and a friend just uncontrollable. We
Yes.
cannot stop laughing.
And then it gets contagious, like
And
me starting to sweat already just talking about it. I'm like, yeah, let's do this. Let's do this. So yeah, but after that though, we can go through a full laughter yoga session. After that, we will go through a body relaxation, a breathing meditation. In other words, I don't bring you in and get you all up and then send you off on your way. We bring you
Mhm.
back down and give you a whole relaxation. So it takes about 45 minutes to an hour, and you feel like you spent the whole day laughing your ass off with your best friend.
So are there exercises associated with this beyond the like, because when I think
It's
of
an exercise
yoga,
like
I
this.
think of like the
No.
posing and
The
yoga
most famous
poses.
laughter yoga exercise ever. It's called the lion, and you do this and this, and you go. "Ah!" That is the exercise right there. "Ah!" There's no poses. It's not that kind of yoga.
Mhm.
The yoga part is the pick the flower and smell it and blow it out. Breathing exercises. So it's
Mhm.
laugh, breathe, that kind of thing, so you don't pass out.
Because when you do get laughing that
Yes.
hard,
Yes.
then it
Yes,
hurts.
you will. You'll get an
you'll laugh
abdominal
to the
workout.
place it
People, we
hurts.
ask people to
Yes.
bring a hand towel because you'll get all sweaty. It is an actual exercise. You will get exercise. You
What are
absolutely.
health benefits besides just
Well,
having this? Because I
rumor.
do think mentally
Mhm.
there's obviously something that would unlock too. And when you think about this, but maybe are there health conditions that this particular people would say this could help them with?
If you have chronic pain, this is excellent for pain. Um, what was the man's name who wrote the book? Do you remember?
Norman Cousins.
Norman Cousins wrote a book, The Anatomy of an Illness, back in the 60s.
Was it muscular
I
dystrophy?
don't remember what he had a debilitating disease, and he watched reruns of Candid Camera. He found that after watching several hours of Candid Camera, he'd be able to get 4 hours of uninterrupted sleep just from laughing his ass off at that kind of thing.
Wearing
Oh,
And so
himself
yeah,
out,
so you get a
essentially.
lot of pain relief, you get a lot of mental anguish relief, a lot of stress relief that comes from that. And it's funny, it's like I said, I did laughter yoga once for a battered women's shelter, and they didn't speak English.
Okay.
Okay. So it was in South Arizona, and I had to have an interpreter for it. And when those women walked in, they were so downtrodden. And I'm sorry if any of you are watching, but they were so downtrodden. They were just beaten. You could see their shoulders were hunched, and they kind of filed in, and it was horrible.
This is where they're at in their
And then
lives
I
right
had to
now.
actually
Yeah.
lower my energy because I was afraid I
Mm.
would startle them. And so
Couldn't
I
come in
got
too hot,
low.
right?
I got low, and I started them slow. And by the time they walked out, they were walking and talking and just going and just they were like a whole different group of people.
Mhm.
It was an amazing experience just to get that whole. I don't think people realize how much we are controlled by our emotions. We really don't. And all of our emotions is that brain soup, all those chemicals
Sure.
that are stirring around in there, the different experiences that we had make those things happen. And so to be able to hack into that and to reset it basically. I reset their day. When they walked out, it's like a whole different day for them. So it's kind of a reset. It's a brain hack reset.
When in Zen Buddhism, I know, especially in Zen Buddhism, there's the concept of the monkey mind, and that
Mhm.
part of this is not engaging with the monkey. Like, it's going to do its thing, and you eventually quiet by not engaging with it. Do you feel like is that a concept within the laughter yoga of somehow that you what is the maybe a breakthrough that one could have? What is something that is the monkey mind? Is that a concept here
It's
that we're meditating beyond in the laughter, in the
not
moment of the
so
laughter?
much, not so much. This is more of a brain hack for the physical parts of it.
Okay.
It's more of the physical parts of it. You do get the happy chemicals feeling of it, but you also fill your body with oxygen. Theory has it that cancer cannot exist in a cell that's full of oxygen.
So
I'm
this
not a
could help with
doctor. I
cancer.
can't say,
Sure.
yeah, I can't say I'm not a doctor, but that's the theory behind it. The purpose of laughter was supposed to be world peace through laughter. Another one of the things that they tell us all the time is to get in touch with our inner child, that we've lost touch with our inner children, and we've gotten very, very serious about our lives. And life was never meant to be quite so serious. So
How do we change that in the modern world?
we come see me for laughter yoga.
We laugh at it.
We choose different.
We
laugh at it.
redefine the story. Everything that we experience, our brain tells us a story of what that is, what that means. Somebody cuts you off in traffic. That means they disrespected you. They're whatever, right? Your brain immediately starts making up stories to tell you why that thing happened. Exactly.
Things that happen in our heads
Exactly.
before we even do
We call that the knee-jerk reaction, right? When your knee-jerk reaction. My theory is that is what you were taught. That's what you're taught in your life, that knee-jerk reaction. It's what happens the next second that defines who you really are, because that's who you choose to be. What you do the very next second, exactly. That's what really matters. And so even if you have an initial, it's what you do right after that with that counts. That's who you choose to be. That's who you really are. I don't know if laughter yoga helps with that, but I kind of got off on a tangent.
I like it. I
think it
that.
does though, because I mean, when we laugh, right? What is it? Dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphins. So
pretty much, yeah.
So reward cycle, feel good, happiness, connection with others, and pain relief. So part of the challenge in modern life is we're also fucking frazzled from life feeling so overwhelming that we can't seem to get out of that rat wheel, the hamster wheel. But if we can pause that long enough to make a conscious decision about what we want to do with our life, then we can make different choices. I would argue, this is where my little raised it by hippies mind comes into play. I think we're being conditioned to stay on the hamster wheel because we buy more shit from Amazon if we do, right? Or wherever, any retailer. Yeah. I mean, we really are programmed to consume by our society. So retail therapy being a thing tells us that that's a social choice, right? But if we want to be less frazzled, we have to make a decision to do something different. You can't stay in the same place that you're at and then say, why am I still stressed out? Because you're still in stress soup city, duh. So laughter yoga is a mechanism to decrease the stress and let ourselves pause long enough to think about, to turn that think part of our brain back on so we can make better choices. I mean, we're kind of all rolling through life in this hyper reactive state. Our amygdalas are on overdrive. We're in lizard brain all the damn time, just trying to dodge traffic and watch our social media.
Survival mode.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is. It's turned off the wrinkly part of our brain that does all the creativity stuff, which for anybody who's creative, which is everybody, that's a really bad thing. And we're not living our best life for sure, but we're probably not even living our good life in that space. So I think laughter yoga is an excellent way. And if nothing else, it's just fucking fun.
Exactly.
It's a lot of fun.
And
it is a
Dr.
lot of
Seuss
fun.
said, fun is good.
It is a lot of fun. And
Laughing sounds horrible times.
I know. Oh, gotta go laugh
I
again.
tell you, it's hard. It's very hard. And introverted people have a hard time with it. It's a very hard thing to do. But when I tell them, don't think of it like laughing. It's not funny. This is exercise. This is just exercise. It's exercise for your brain. And my nerds go, oh,
That's how
Well,
Chris looked
yeah.
at me.
here's the
Yeah.
thing is because and I'm sorry because maybe it's just me uh seeing this how it could apply to me maybe. But I think about because I used to go to a place and do like it was a Zen
Mhm.
Buddhist
Mhm.
thing, and I would go and we would basically like sit and stare at a wall for about 20 minutes. Then we'd get up and just walk with our heads down around the room for about 10, come back, do another 20 minutes of staring at the wall, little chanty kind of thing a couple of times. And I found this all to be very enjoyable and relaxing to me, and that I was trying to look within myself in these quiet times and whatnot. I also got to a place in life where, if I'm being fully honest, it started making me sick doing it. And twice I had to walk out of the room because I felt just overwhelmed and that I was going to pass out or throw up. So there are, at any rate, I don't, that's just my walk in
Interesting.
life. But when I think about the value, because a lot of that is focusing on your breath. That is
Mhm.
such a big thing in yoga and meditation and whatnot. Even if, I mean, Zen slant or not, I think it is a very common practice to focus on just breathing. And so I start to think, well, if you just take that and say, focus on laughing, that the same thing where it's like, I'm going to stop thinking about anything but the laugh.
Yeah.
And now I am laughing.
Mhm.
And that is all that's going and to focus on that.
It'll be
It
the
is
same
a
thing in laughter
mindful
yoga.
technique.
Yes.
And
It'll be the
so,
same thing.
okay, so I'm
You
just
won't, yeah, you
saying,
won't, I don't give you
I
time
see
to get
that
inside your
within
head.
in
Yeah.
there, and I see
No.
the value there of
Yes.
it's like
Yes.
related to a Zen thing to me
Oh,
when I
absolutely.
hear
It'll turn
about
your brain
this.
off that way. Yeah. 'Cause I
But
don't
and
give you time to think between the laughing stuff. You don't have time for that.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
here
part
under
of
my
the
spell.
And that's
reason
for
behind
like,
why that works, and it's the same reason that the transcendental meditation works, is with the breath work. When you're on autopilot and you're just breathing, it's that's the sympathetic nervous system. It's designed to just keep us alive, right?
mhm,
But when we choose to breathe and we're breathing intentionally, or we're paying attention to our breath, it turns on a whole different part of our nervous system. It turns on the parasympathetic nervous system, which is a completely different set of biological drivers. So you are shifting out of autopilot into intentionality. Now, breathing, we really want to breathe not without having to think about it. That's super important to stay alive, right?
mhm.
But that's like, again, to Chris's point, it's a biohack to choose to interrupt that autopilot system with something that seems to be something we don't think about. So whether that
Mhm.
is mindful breathing, whether that is mindful walking, whether that is mindful driving, doesn't
Playing in a
matter.
band and your
It
guitar.
doesn't matter. Whatever the thing is that you're doing, if you're paying attention to the thing in the moment, it's going to let you turn off a bunch of stuff that's maybe not so
Mhm.
beneficial, right? Because the other thing we're really good at as humans is worrying, right? And
Mhm.
we're worrying because we're thinking about shit that happened before that we can't change. And we're thinking about shit that maybe is going to happen that we don't know. And we're putting a ton of energy,
And
like
we're
literal energy into
perpetually
that.
between those two places at all
Exactly.
times on some level.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to ask because, and you say that, and I think about these, we are all in, and it comes back to the different seasons, and it comes back to, sometimes it's okay to be sad too. And you need to work through sadness and the season of sadness as it presents itself. And sometimes that can happen because of loss of a family member or a friend. And I mean, there's so many
Broken
things
pencil.
that we can say legitimately, like, it's okay to be sad
Internet
about
issues.
that, right?
Absolutely.
And so I wonder, and maybe this is also just maybe my morbidness at play as well. But when I hear about like the laughter yoga, is there maybe a place for crying yoga or, to release in that kind of
Don't we call that
way?
therapy?
Yeah.
Is
I think
that
that's therapy. That's what you go to therapy for.
Well, I have two thoughts on that.
I'm
though.
just curious
think-
because
yeah.
sometimes I see there's a space for kind of both sides of a thing, and that a person could really value from getting into a place of it's okay to like without explaining or having a conversation with
Like,
anybody,
Are we talking
just let it out.
It's
You're-
emotional
you
release.
know,
Is what
Fight
it
Primal
is.
Club?
scream.
It's the same
Yeah.
as laughing so hard that you cry.
Yeah.
It's that
Remember-
that's that releasing of emotions.
Remember
Mhm.
Bob? Remember Bob? from Fight Club. Remember how they met? He used to go to
On Fight Club.
yeah,
Okay.
he goes to this like
Oh,
group
yeah.
therapy and they just go there and
Yeah.
cry.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay.
I think
Yeah.
there
One of
is.
my
Maybe that's-
exercises like that. We go down, you go down crying, boo hoo 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 hoo, and then you come up laughing.
My name is
That's
Robert.
one of the
And
laughter
you're
yogas.
repeating that as almost like
We do it over and over.
kind of way.
Yes, we do it over and over. It's one of the laughter
Interesting.
exercises in laughter.
But I think what you're talking about, Nick, is not glossing over the uncomfortable parts of life,
Mm.
right? And it is more socially acceptable to laugh about stuff in public than it is to cry about stuff in
Sure.
public, because that's seen as an emotional vulnerability, and especially for anybody who identifies as male or anybody who is in a leadership role.
yeah,
that
the consequences
vulnerability-
are
the
worse.
consequences are trash.
because
Mhm.
if you're crying, well, then you're just weak.
Weak.
You're weak, right?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah. So,
So we turn it
yeah.
off. We just turn it off. And our culture is real good about fix your face, girl. Right? I mean,
Mhm.
whatever your gender is. So I think there's a desperate need to acknowledge that difficult experiences happen and we should process them, because the fact that we don't as a culture is why we're in this shitstorm that we're in now, or a part of it. And but the other piece I want to talk about is it's really easy to get sucked into like that swamp of despair. So the brain
Mm.
is wired out of survival for watching for negative stuff. It's called the negativity bias. It's a very strong biological driver because that's the stuff that will actually kill us.
Mm.
If the saber-toothed tiger is coming around the corner, it's going to eat us. We're going to die, and we won't pass on our genetics to the next generation. The positive stuff, the enjoyable stuff, is like a next level evolution. It's not necessary for life, literally. Makes it a heck of a lot more enjoyable, but it's not necessary. So it's
Mhm.
really easy to get trapped in that negative spiral if we spend too much intentional time on the negative. But taking it back to balance, they're both valid, real parts of the human experience. So when we don't process the negative, it's still there. It's just waiting for the least opportune time to pop up.
Mhm.
And there's nothing like breaking into tears in the middle of your conference call because of something that,
Sure.
because somebody had a pink sweater on. I mean, there's no reason for it, but it just happens sometimes because we don't process our stuff.
Well, and we're very hardwired to get back to work and any missing
Yep.
of work. And I think, and I've seen this isn't a concept that I'm making up. I've heard it, but we even kind of feel guilty in a lot of jobs for taking vacations and
It
using
makes
our
me so
vacation
crazy.
time. And,
Yeah.
and when we're on the vacation, it's like, well, it's
Emails
driving me
packing up.
crazy that I'm because I just feel so needed in my role. And how are they getting by? And, so I think we take on a lot of that. And while again, it is maybe in some way important, because if you're in that mindset that tells you also you're very involved, you feel part of something. But I do think that and I think it is an Indiana thing when you talk about it, is like there is this thing where it is like shut up, eat shit, and get to work and prove yourself. And we are very much I'm going to prove that you're wrong about me kind of place. I'm going to prove that I belong. I think Indiana, like when I think about what it means and the people that I'm around to be here, it is a fake it till you you got a lot of people willing to step up and fake it till they make it here. And like
They
I
never
don't know
make
that-
it. They're just faking it.
I
the
mean,
whole
there's
time.
also a lot. Well,
That's the challenge.
I think there's also a lot of people now that just don't give a shit.
Mhm.
They don't give a shit, and they are on autopilot, and they will come. And if the rule is like, get off that cell phone for 10 minutes, you're going to have to just deal with the fact that I'm not going to do that until
Mhm.
you fire me. I'm going to walk around. And this is what I've seen.
Are we talking about work again?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
We
Just
got
the brain
okay,
hack go.
Before I forget, let me drop this in here. Speaking of workplaces that don't acknowledge real life existing and like vacation shouldn't happen, all that shit. I worked for a
Mhm.
company that made steel burial caskets, and they did not allow bereavement leave if an employee had a death of a family member. It didn't exist. If you had vacation time stored up, cool. But if you did not, too bad,
Sure.
sucks for you. We don't offer specifically. I mean,
Mhm.
you literally work for an industry that profits from people dying, and you don't acknowledge that when somebody dies, your people need time off.
Isn't that wild?
I thought that was the dumbest policy ever.
Why do you think that we settle for less in this world?
Fear. I think it's fear.
I think it's the ability to blow stuff off, to say, oh, that doesn't matter, whatever, and go on to something else. Just
Do you
to turn
think
to
it's
something else.
somewhat
Yeah, because it's
chasing
the
a
stuff that
carrot
really
to-
matters that we stand our ground. If it's something that really matters to us, we stand our ground and we stand up and fight it. At least a lot of us do. In other
Mhm.
words, we say, fuck you, and we quit that job.
Mhm.
We walk off the job. You know what I'm saying? So we
Sure.
all have a line that will only back up till our butt hits the wall. Everybody's wall's in a different place. But I think the things that really, really matter to us, those are the things that's when our butt hits the wall. I think that we've gotten better with the ability to say, well, fuck that, whatever, and go on to the next thing.
Mhm.
And oh, fuck this, it's just my job, it's not my life.
So you would say that is an improvement in the way that we're living?
I think it's a coping mechanism. I don't know that's necessarily an improvement.
Because it does feel like then that overall quality of product then surely has to suffer, right? Because you lose the skills and the qualifications that somebody that's been doing this for 15 years and they just left. And now you've got nobody that fully actually understands how to do that. I have to think this is very commonly happening.
It is.
And
Especially like in
so
construction
then
and
our
houses and
quality
stuff.
standards are certainly
Yes.
going lower. And I think any person from a certain generation is always going to be like, they don't make it like they used to, right?
Why can't you fix these
But
potholes?
I think it's also our quality standards when it comes to people's attitudes and work ethics and things that are certainly on the downward path, if you ask me.
Well, if you're in the company
I
asking
do
the
think
questions you
it's-
just did, they're going to fire you.
Right. And because we don't feel compensated well enough. I mean, I think that is almost universal, right? And we do realize that there are people with much easier jobs up here making gross amounts of money compared to what we do. So we lose this respect for anybody that we consider on a pedestal here monetarily, right? And so I think we disconnect from that. We disconnect from the concern of do I care if this company succeeds or fails, right? And you're not invested in that. And this is what they're doing. They're doing this through the culture of how business is working here. Is that ever going to change?
Oh, everything changes. I think that's the beauty of it, but also the challenge, right? I mean, the world that we live in today is, even for our older boomer leadership folks, almost
Hey.
not naming any names.
I have the answer to this question, by the way.
I think the world that we live in today is
definitely
almost unimaginable for people who spent the vast majority of their professional life in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, right?
Mhm.
They cannot imagine a world where people aren't loyal to the company, where people don't want to stay in the same space, don't want to stay in the same house for 40, 50, 60
Sure.
years. That has shifted already significantly. And I think everything changes. The question is, is the new reality something that works for you or not? Do I have a flexible enough approach to life to tackle whatever the next iteration is and be okay with it and embrace it with excitement?
I have a different theory.
Because you're
Okay.
old.
I do, because I'm old, but this isn't
Well,
this isn't
and
an
that's-
old theory. This is a new theory. And here's the thing: is a lot of us can't just walk out of our jobs because our health care is tied to it.
Yeah, that's fair.
If we had universal
Yes.
health care like the other 32 countries in the world that do successfully, then our jobs wouldn't be dependent upon that. In other words, we would have a lot more flexibility to walk off of our job if we're not giving up our entire family's health care.
Mhm.
That, I think, is one of the biggest problems. Is they haven't made it that we want to stay because they're paying us enough or because it's such a great environment, but because our doctors, our medications, our healthcare is tied up into it.
Mhm.
And I think that one of the ways it would change the face of the American worker across the country would be universal healthcare. Take health insurance out of the workforce.
Yeah, healthcare is the modern company store. Absolutely.
Well, I think that to me, it boils down to, and I saw somebody talking about this recently, and I always hate, like, it's like, do I just regurgitate something I've heard and it jived with me, and I really don't know enough about it to even talk about it? Sometimes I want, but essentially, that the idea is that these insurance companies, which I've always just felt like insurance is this kind of scam thing. It just feels
Legal
very
loan
much,
sharking.
and you know, for them to like take this money from you and then deny coverage, or it's like, you know, to me, I pay in for 4 years straight on a family plan, like $400 a month or something coming out of my checks to pay for this health insurance.
So they can turn
I
around
get
and pay for it. They don't give you
appendicitis.
They don't
I
give you
get
anything.
appendicitis, which you think, you know, this is a very routine thing. People get this. The little surgery they do for that, it should be a pretty, you know. And so it's like, to me, here's the scam. Yep, insurance kicked in and they covered this. And so because they did that, you only owe us $7,900. And it's like, I live paycheck to paycheck and I have this health insurance, and I should not have a $7,000 bill behind what my insurance paid for this simple,
And that
like,
bill's
this
going
is
to
a very
crash your
common
credit
thing.
too. It's going to crash your credit. Now you can't
guess
buy a
what?
house.
I had a garnishment because of it and
Yes.
whatnot eventually.
Yes.
And I mean, so it's something I'm very like mindful and passionate. I don't trust politics to get it right. And I think because of that, because Obama promised universal health care, that was part of his campaign. And then we got Obamacare, where it was like, no, we're just going to force you to buy fucking insurance. And I felt like it was a betrayal. And also because what I gather is in a thing where we could eliminate the insurance. Now the companies that are producing things, the doctors themselves, are competing with each other. Right now, there is not competition. These are monopoly kind of things, and very monopolized. And so they get nothing for providing lower prices for us.
What's
So
also
if you
interesting in
could-
that space, though, is that the people who are making those decisions about how an industry should go are often not experts in the thing that's being done.
They're
Right.
businessmen.
So,
Mhm.
like MBAs and lawyers are deciding who does and doesn't get healthcare based on policy, and MBAs and lawyers are deciding what goes into our curriculum and how we're going to teach in the classroom, not educational experts, aka teachers. Like at one point in the state of Texas, there was not a single teacher on the Board of Education, and Texas drives the textbooks for pretty much the whole country.
Mhm.
So, like, we've taken out the subject matter experts and put in business experts, which means profit margin
Capitalism.
experts,
Mhm.
unfettered capitalism.
This started in the 40s or 50s,
Mhm.
somewhere in there. Yeah.
Mhm.
See, the thing about the textbooks
long game,
is
right?
because there's so many schools in Texas, because so as big as it is, that's the majority of textbooks are bought there.
Who
And so
buys them?
publishing companies just go ahead
Mhm.
and only publish those books.
Mhm.
So as Texas school books go, so go the rest of the books across the country.
And that's just one example. I mean,
Right.
the same is true
Like-
for healthcare.
And
We all
healthcare's
know,
the same way. Yeah.
right? If anybody's ever called in to dispute a claim, a denied claim on their healthcare, you're not talking to a doctor. You're talking to some kid they hired to work in a call center who has,
Right.
if you're lucky, knows how to spell some of the words that you're
So
talking about.
The problem is because there are all those problems, like with Obamacare and stuff. Instead of trying to fix it, and I'm not gonna get too political,
Mhm.
but they spend so much money and so much time trying to repeal it. If
Mhm.
they had spent half that just trying to fix it,
Mhm.
we could actually have the thing. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And so there's such the conflict. Instead of trying to take what you have and make it better, everybody wants to burn it
Well-
down and start from the ground up. Reinvent the
Chris,
wheel.
it's not that easy. There's companies involved that need to be paid for their sponsorship of said party, of
know.
said
It's-
candidate.
I know. All right, so here's
That's what
here's
makes
the-
our vote
rest
disingenuous in the
of it.
first place. You could vote for the right person, but are you voting for the right money? And you don't know whose money you're voting for
This is
because
true.
they don't want to tell
You know,
you.
it's
Who
Well, I
gave
can
them the
guarantee
fucking money?
There are none of the people that you're voting
The
for and
greatest
money
thing
you're
in
voting
all of
for
politics
that
is
have
money.
simply
All right.
your
Money
best
is
interest in mind.
politics.
Okay,
1967.
I gotta speak to your audience now. I
Yeah.
get what they're saying. I do. But you guys, you have to vote. You have to vote. I know you're disenfranchised. I know you think it doesn't matter, but let me tell you something. When people vote, Republicans lose. Do you hear me? When people vote, people
Correct.
win.
So
That's what happens.
the message
People
isn't
win. Whether you
vote. The
believe it-
message is think and
Think.
vote.
At this point, I don't even care I don't care who you vote for. I
But I
don't.
think-
Statistics show us that the more people, in other words, the more number of people vote, the more things that happen to help people. So that's it. Whether you want to or not, everybody has to vote.
Well,
You'll-
and I think the sense of disenfranchisement is so overwhelming because the things that disenfranchise us happen at the big levels, right? So we're talking about like presidential elections or federal legislation
Right.
or whatever. And those things are harder to move. It's like trying to, what's the euphemism? It's like trying to change the course of the Titanic, right? That's a very difficult, cumbersome thing to change for lots of reasons, much of which is corruption, right? The dog catcher in your local community, however, you probably do have some say over. Your school board, you probably do have some control over. The type of socks you wear to your warehouse job, you probably do have some say over. And here's a little biohack for people. When we feel out of control, our brain freaks the fuck out and goes into survival mode, which means that we make less informed decisions. We make snap decisions based on that
Knee-jerk.
immediate emotional response. We're not making logical reactions based on a better data set. So grab some control back. You absolutely can. Everybody can take some control back over your life. And it's astonishing. Just choosing intentionally to wear mismatched socks, or choosing to focus on your breath, or choosing to take a different route to the gas station to buy your cigarettes. Those little bits of choice seem meaningless, but they're abso-fucking-lutely not. They are ways to take what control you can back over your life. I mean, why give in? I mean, if you want to give up, that's cool. And I don't judge anybody who is just burned out, frazzled, and done, and just says, I'm just going to keep chugging along until I kick off this mortal coil. I've expended all my energy. That's fine. But if you're not there yet, or you don't want to get there, take some control back.
Come to our event.
Oh yeah, come to our event. Learn ways to be happier, right? And spend time
Well
doing things that make you
done.
happy.
Because we're getting to that. We need to tell you guys about that. Is we have an event that you can actually come and learn how to do all these things we've been talking about.
And talk to people who want to do it too.
And talk to people who want to do it too.
And that's Wednesday, February 19th.
February 20th.
February
It's easy
20th.
because it's not 420.
March 20th.
Yeah.
It's 320. Yeah, it is.
Start
right?
over. It is March 20th, Wednesday, March 20th at 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
And
2 o'clock.
where is it located?
It's at the Canitarian Center. So it is at 3400 South Rural in Indianapolis. We're super grateful for the partnership. And if ever there was a community focused on making more happiness in the world, that's a group of people doing that, right? And all proceeds from the event, I want to pause. The event is free to attend. We do have a free will donation if people want to donate to the cause. And every donation that comes in, all the proceeds are going to pay for more resources to help serve our friends who are on the streets and experiencing homelessness. Because if there's anything that'll dampen your happiness, it's wondering where your next meal is going to come for and if you're going to be frozen to death or not.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
that being said, we'll have different fundraising things going on. There's some artwork that can be bought and sold, and just different things that will have tip jars and that kind of stuff going on.
Awesome.
But there's no charge to attend. But we do have limited space, so we ask people to please register as soon as possible because that space is filling up quickly.
And how do they do that?
So we're on Eventbrite. I think there's a link in the show notes for attending, to click into that.
Happiness in the Heartland.
But if you just Google Happiness in the Heartland, we are on most of the local event calendars. If you go to happinessiscourage.com, there's a link on my website to.
I saw that on. So that's what your shirt says. Where did you? Is that your motto in life? What
It
does
is,
that
and here's
mean?
why. Adrenaline will help you overcome immediate crisis, right? So if like you've seen the stories of mom lifts car off child trapped under vehicle, yep, that works. That is an absolute approach to instantaneous bravery, courage, whatever, and it will leave you with the biggest adrenaline hangover ever, and it's not sustainable. Those are big bursts of energy for very critical moments. For the rest of time, finding ways to be happy is more like having a wellspring of energy you can tap into. It's really optimism, right? We're talking about hope that the world is not just this deep, dark, scary place we've been describing. It is. And it's also this incredibly beautiful, awesome space with really cool stuff happening, shows to go to, cool people to meet, animals to play with. I mean, there's amazing
you have the
stuff.
courage to face it.
Yeah, and happiness is a way to keep you going, to find those cool things in the midst of the other trash that you got to dodge around.
I love that. It does take courage to not get overwhelmed, I think. And for a lot of people, it can be different things that overwhelm us.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of times, even just admitting that we are overwhelmed is very difficult. What is something at home that somebody can do? Uh, I see you have written some books, and we haven't really talked about them. And we still got, I think, about 10 to 15 minutes here.
Yeah.
So a couple of things that
Hey, by the way, like, I don't know what you're doing, but I've got time. If you want to go beyond 2.
I mean,
Well,
I
whatever happens, whatever time we end, you can't leave because I have kept my mouth shut for almost this
Chef's
entire
got
time.
thoughts.
I have so many things I want to talk to you guys about.
No,
You
you're
know
good.
what I'm
We're good.
saying?
We're good.
Like so many.
Yeah,
Like,
we're good.
I want to talk
We're-
about
yeah,
Mark
we're good.
Manson.
Yeah,
I
I
want to
got
talk
time.
about
I got
all
coffee.
kinds of stuff.
I got coffee.
I
We're
got
good.
coffee.
Speaking of, like, what does that mean to
Second
you?
coffee.
Coffee?
No, look at your camera. What does that mean to you when you see that image, Sarah?
That is that. I don't know that's the Ohio State Buckeye.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
The Ohio State.
We know the Ohio
Ohio
State.
I had the great privilege of being a guest lecturer there one time,
Hell
and
yeah.
that was a hell of an experience.
We were guest lecturers.
I was
there.
also a guest
Okay,
lecturer.
so
there.
I also was a guest lecturer.
We've both been guest lecturers
yes,
at the Ohio State.
Ohio State, which is huge.
It's fun.
Hell
Shout
yeah.
out.
Just want to drop that ball.
Shout out to our Ohio friends.
No
Love you
shade. I don't
guys.
even do
I'm a
sports
Buckeye.
ball, so I don't
Happiness
know.
in the heartland. The first thing that came to my mind was like,
Where's
oh
my
wait, Chayo.
Buckeyes?
Yeah.
We have a lot of friends in Ohio.
We do.
Hell yeah.
They're a much happier state, actually. Just
Yes,
saying.
they are.
I've done,
I
Is that
I know
true?
this
done
from
a lot of lap yoga.
experience.
Done a lot of
They
lap
may
yoga.
not know how to drive, and they sure do
Wow.
love their
In fact,
sports, but they are happy motherfuckers over there in
I'm
Lap
Ohio.
yoga
shocked to
again
hear
later
that.
next month there.
You know what they say? Ohio is for lovers.
And laughers.
Yeah.
Lovers
Oh,
and
yeah.
laughers.
You got some laughs over here too. Right?
Right.
So
Tell about your books real quick and then we'll move on.
Well, can I lead into that like specifically because I see that you have written some children's books? Is that
It's true.
yes?
Yes.
The thank you
Mhm.
children's book about gratitude, and then 321 thank you that says it's a 3-minute gratitude journal for kids. And I hope it's okay that I wanted to start there because I just find it very interesting. How do you write and give this information to children in a children's book? Like, that's really fascinating. And
So the seed of the idea was planted when I was defending my dissertation. So I really am a doctor, and I did my research looking at the impact of intentional gratitude on job satisfaction and other organizational performance metrics. That's a dry reading, but it was a fun work to do. But while I was defending my dissertation, there were these 3 academics who were grilling me on my research. And at one point there was this really long pause, and the gentleman who was asking questions finally said, "When did we stop saying thank you? When I was a kid, we always wrote thank you notes." And then he went on to grill my research process. But it really sparked a thought process for me because I'm the same age as he is. And when I was a kid, you got a Christmas present and you wrote a thank you note to grandma. Whether you liked it or not, you wrote a thank you note to grandma. And in America, gratitude as a concept comes up every year in November because we have this holiday where we all get around and eat a bunch of food and we express gratitude. I don't know that that's what's actually happening. I would argue that a lot of times that gratitude is performative in that space. Because if you ask people, what are you grateful for? And they say faith, food, and family, or they have some like trite list of stuff that they trot out that maybe they're grateful for, but it's that generic answer. There's not a lot of thought or heart behind it. And then I thought about then fast forward, my first grandson was born. So I have 4 kids. They're all adults. And
Shout out.
they're amazing humans doing cool stuff in the world, right? And my
awesome.
first grandson was being baked at the time. He wasn't born yet. And I was thinking to myself, how can I, right, back to solution finding, how can I make a space to help kids like this grandbaby of mine and others learn how to approach these concepts rather than unlearn bad habits when they're adults. I mean,
Sure.
I'll do that work all day long too.
Mhm.
But if I could teach healthier habits about like emotional intelligence earlier on and help them have less shenanigans as they're navigating growing up, that's a really powerful space. So that's how it started. How do you do it? I did it through a picture book. So the book that I wrote, the Thank You Gratitude Book for Children, is designed to, it takes you sort of the framework is a seasonal experience of moments in time where things may or may not be awesome. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't, and how those are still points to pause and appreciate what's happening in the space.
Mhm.
So it was inspired very much by my love of Dr. Seuss, because I think that's a format that kids and young readers really resonate with.
So in like the rhyming
Mhm.
and kind of like pentameter there is where.
And it's designed for really very young children to go along. So it's a picture book with big pictures of other kids, lots of different kinds of kids in lots of different structures and environments experiencing life, and then pauses for appreciation sprinkled throughout it. I really want to get us away from only doing gratitude with our families when it's the Hallmark holiday of Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
I love Hallmark holidays for their opportunity to like hone in on a concept like love or mom or dad or
Sure.
country or whatever, but that cannot be the only time we do a thing. That's just a
Right.
shitty way to experience growth, right? So that's where it started, and it was such a fun journey creating that book, and it's an even more fun journey seeing people get the book and then spend time with their little human, whether it's their kid or their nephew or their neighbor or whatever,
Mhm.
and having these conversations in a way that's approachable, not overwhelming, because some of the stuff's pretty heavy, right? Let's talk about the scientific benefits of serotonin on your cancer diagnosis. Like that's real, but that's also really heavy. Could we just have some fun with it? Yeah, I think so. And the same is true for gratitude journaling. Wow. So many people think you have to sit down with like a blank notebook and spend an hour writing 7 pages of deeply introspective stuff, and that's a lot. It's overwhelming. And especially if you are not in a happy place, but you're trying to dig yourself out of that hole, it only takes, I think, like 16 seconds to actually
16 seconds.
release serotonin in the brain if you're experiencing a positive emotional state. So we don't have to spend an hour journaling. 5 or 10 minutes is more than enough to experience the positive benefits. And in today's crazy busy world, that's probably all you're willing to dedicate when
Mhm.
you're trying something new.
Mhm.
And for kids who are growing up in a world full of social media notifications and microwave popcorn, the attention spans aren't there. And
Mhm.
I'm not criticizing, I'm just acknowledging the reality. So if I'm going
Yes.
to ask parents to sit down with their kids and help them engage in gratitude, I want it to be approachable, I want it to be manageable, and I want it to be beneficial. And that's what drove all of the planning process and the design for both those books.
So is that you worked with an illustrator then
No, I
that
did it
did
all
it?
myself.
So you drew and like
I subscribed to a very expensive photo library and was able to use photographs of kids. I
Okay.
wanted, back to we talked about early on, eye contact. I wanted
Mhm.
kids to see themselves in these pictures of kids experiencing life. I didn't want to have any ambiguity around that. So I thought photographs would be. The research shows that when kids see pictures of babies, it makes them happy. When we see pictures of happy babies, it makes us happy. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to not forget to get a little bit into the candy thing because that obviously makes people happy too.
it does.
But I do want to say that I think it is important when you talk about our ability to give our children these lessons before they have bad habits. And I do think that it's clearly needed in this world. And maybe people would say, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of entitlement out there. And I feel like and that's not just saying the younger generation. I think it's where we've kind of come as a society, and I see it across all spectrums, you know? And maybe having more gratitude is key with kind of fighting against that sense of entitlement, you know, because you appreciate. Gratitude is to appreciate what you have, appreciate the people around you. And when you start doing that and you really start to realize that it's the good experiences, the bad experiences, and people that got you to this moment right now. And the more you do that, I think that it causes you then to interact with people a little differently and appreciate things that much more, you know?
I mean, gratitude is really the social mechanism by which we acknowledge that we are not alone,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
And you don't have to even personally have a connection to the person or the thing that created the space where you're feeling good and not isolated. Like I'm a coffee addict. I'll acknowledge that, right? I don't actually know any coffee farmers personally. I know a couple of roasters, but I don't know any coffee farmers personally. I am still deeply grateful to them for doing the hard work of growing the bean and everybody else along that entire supply chain. I mean, that's a really important piece of my life. And I'm super grateful, literally very grateful. And I think about it all the time, how I can make choices that positively impact people that I will probably never meet unless I get a really cool gig in like Costa Rica or something. And then I'm for sure going to tour a coffee plantation. So I think when we experience appreciation, even if we don't realize it, what we're really saying is, I acknowledge that something outside of myself, or maybe even myself, but it's not like it's not this thinky thing, navel gazing thing. Something outside, bigger than me, created a space that's good for me, and I'm acknowledging that. I mean, that's powerful social connectivity, and isolation is bad. If anybody's bored and wants some good but depressing reading, the Surgeon General put out a report recently about the impact of isolation, and he refers to isolation as an epidemic in and of itself. Gratitude cannot fix all of that, but it is an excellent anti-inflammatory for the impacts of isolation. I think it's just really powerful stuff.
Awesome. So let's talk about the
I
candy.
love the candy. So, Kris, why did we get a freeze dryer?
Well, because freeze-dried food is expensive, and I do a lot of camping and hiking and such. And so, and somebody is a science nerd. And it turns out there's a lot of science that goes into freeze-drying food. And then the freeze dryer had a candy setting on it. And she started doing research on candy. And
So fun.
yeah, it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of science that goes into it. And it turns out it's not cheap. There's a lot of finances that go into it too. And so the candy kind of started help paying for the freeze dryer.
So
And up until that point, I was like, we're gonna do what? I'm gonna candy. We're making candy.
You have a doctorate. We're selling candy.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what is this gonna pay for the student loan? Right. So
Yes.
yeah. But y'all, I stand around on the weekend and give candy to kids. I mean, come on, right? It didn't take long to. I was like, oh, hold up. This is a side gig I can get behind. And it is. It's a lot of fun. And there's still a lot of science to it. And I like to do things that I haven't seen before. And so we make candy that you can't get anyplace else. You can't get it on Amazon. You're not going to find. We have, I don't know how many different flavors of our rainbow rocks that we made them in tahini and chamoy, and we made them in wasabi, and we made them in smokehouse bacon. And yes.
So you're literally making the candy first,
No.
then freeze drying.
Indiana does not allow us to do that.
Indiana's
Okay.
got some weird cottage laws around freeze-dried candy. Well, around everything actually. But so we purchase commercial candy and then we run it through the freeze dryer itself and we package it up and we market that. I don't want to use the brand names. I don't want to get in trouble with the big
our
companies.
rainbow rocks.
But we do have a wide variety of freeze-dried candy. But the reason we
Rainbow rocks, is that like maybe turds? Gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we take those and then we season it. Well, some of them are regular. They come in different flavors like tropical fruit and berry. But then we take some of them and season them and we put like sea salt and dill on some of them, make them pickle flavored, that kind of thing. So
and we had to do wild, crazy shit.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, right?
Also, well, hey, I also do
sorry.
saltwater taffy. And when you freeze dry saltwater taffy, it expands. And so we cut them into quarters. And so, and in case you didn't know, saltwater taffy comes in every flavor you ever heard of.
Sure.
Pickle,
Yeah.
chili
Pickle,
mango,
chocolate chip cookie.
root beer float.
Yeah, I have
Chili
chocolate
cheese
chip.
burrito?
Yes,
Probably.
no, chili mango. It makes my face sweat. But yeah, pretty much every flavor you ever heard of.
So
here's
what
the
does
thing.
freeze
Black
drying
licorice.
do? Sorry.
The process of freeze drying is super fascinating. Freeze drying food is a different conversation. Freeze dried candy uses a freeze dryer, which is a big commercial machine with a really powerful vacuum attached to it, basically, to soften an existing candy and then hit it with this intense vacuum and puff it out. So it takes it from its native state to a puffed out version of itself. So depending on the level of heat applied to the sugar originally, on the carbon chains, it may become like cotton candy, It may become like spun glass. It may just become like airy nougat.
It
Just-
could
it
become
depends on what
it
the
could be
candy
the
is.
texture of a Lucky Charm
But you're
marshmallow.
under control.
some
You're
stuff.
saying
Mhm.
under a different controlled, what how we're freeze drying this, how we control it this way
Mhm.
and that.
We change it.
Then it will be this at the end.
It transforms
you
it.
are
For-
controlling and going for, like you said,
Mhm.
the
For example, the
laffy
taffy.
or-
The taffy, when you normally eat saltwater taffy, it's sticky and chewy. So people with dentures or braces, that kind of thing, or bad teeth, just can't
Or
do
just don't
that,
like sticky
right?
Right.
stuff.
But when we put it in the freeze dryer, it puffs it out and it makes it airy, so it literally melts in your mouth. So people with dentures now can have exactly.
Our neighbor cried.
I
She's
wish
in
you
her
would have
90s.
brought us some.
We
of
will.
those
We'll
guys.
I
bring you
will.
some.
I'll
We
maybe
owe-
I will come back
I
and
owe
bring it
you
to you.
freeze-dried candy.
We will bring you candy.
Our neighbor's in her 90s and she has some
Sounds
dental
awful.
He's being
challenges.
selfish. We just had free candy on Wednesday.
It's not like this. You didn't.
No.
No, yeah.
Promise.
Not like this.
It's a like inside.
Yeah.
It really,
It's a
because
child
I have
labor inside
dentures,
joke.
so
Same. I
you
do
know,
too.
and it sounds.
It's
I
really.
can't enjoy taffy.
We
That's
take
for
our
sure.
candy to
No
the
way.
church. The church is who helps us with research and development. When we're in town, we always go to church service on Wednesdays at 7:30 at the church, and we bring in the different things that we're working on so they can try it. And so every
In
Wednesday
development.
there's candy.
When you
there. We
say
bring
the
candy.
church,
The
I don't wanna
Canitarian
The
assume-
First
Center.
Church of Cannabis, the
Okay.
Canitarian Center.
and
First
that
of
is where
Cannabis.
the event
Mhm.
is at.
Exactly,
So
yes.
and so you guys,
Yeah, what up, Bill?
I just had
shout out.
Hi, I love you.
We love you. Hi, I love you.
So you are regularly there attending that, and
Yes.
then networked probably with
Mhm.
them and kind of
Yeah.
coordinated them.
Our missions
from
are
out
very
of that.
deeply aligned. I mean, helping people live better, healthier, happier lives is our mission statement and theirs. And so it was a pretty natural.
And the fact that they're
friendship.
donating the space. I mean,
Mhm.
Yeah,
that-
it was
that's
such a
huge.
gift.
That's
Such a
huge.
gift.
Now,
We're
would
very
you
thankful.
say that it would be important for people to distinguish this event from the location at all, or do you feel like they should expect a certain amount of something there
No,
when it comes
There
to
will
that?
no.
I think that it's important for people to understand that the Canitarian Center is bigger than they probably realize from a mission perspective. I think there is a narrative out there that people attend that particular institution because they want to get stoned. I will share that I do not partake in that particular recreational activity at all. I don't care if people do, but it's not in my natural space. And I am a proud member of that organization because of the positive impact they are working to have on our local community. I would like people to understand that it's a far more complex and beautiful community that is dedicated to making the world a better place. There may be a relatively common recreational behavior that people engage in that draws them to that space in the first place, and an acknowledgement that there is some positive impact to be had from researching the benefits of a particular recreational behavior, which is not currently legal in Indiana.
Mhm.
But that is not the sole purpose of the organization. Now, that being said, will there be posters that promote legalization in the church? Yeah, it's their space. We're not going to sanitize the space, right?
Mhm.
Absolutely
Yeah.
not.
Mhm.
And we are members of the community, and I would be disingenuous and disrespectful of a space that I have a lot of respect for if I pretended
Absolutely.
otherwise.
That
Sure.
being said, there's also not going to be a party going on in the basement
No, there
either.
isn't during
That's-
services
yeah.
either.
Yeah,
So
there isn't. It's still illegal in Indiana, so that kind of stuff does not happen on the premises during services. or
No.
Well,
anytime.
I do think
I've
that is
actually
worth
shot one
mentioning
of these
because some
podcasts
people might
there.
not
Yeah.
know.
It's definitely
they
Yeah.
don't. I didn't
Some
know.
people might not know
Yeah,
that.
I
and
was
might just
super
automatically
hesitant.
assume that. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that we are, kind of making that distinction, because I think the thing of it is if that's what you were looking for, don't let
Yeah.
if you think, oh,
Yeah.
this is, then
If-
you
yeah.
should know that
No,
that's
if
not
you're
gonna
coming to
be
get
the
high,
thing.
that's not what's going to happen.
And
You're going to get hugged instead.
You're hugged
yeah,
instead.
and we're gonna laugh, right?
Yeah.
And we're gonna laugh.
Well, you're really going to get hugged a lot, actually.
Nick's
It's-
gonna
With
show up
consent.
and
Yeah.
he'll be there in his like 84 Chevy. If you want to get high, just if that's the only reason why you're going, just sit up lazy.
Or just
in
laugh
the
some
parking
more and
lot
get some
snapping.
serotonin. It
Yeah.
does the same thing to your brain.
Now we all go hang out afterwards somewhere else. That's cool.
Check that out.
Okay, well, I
Hey,
think we're about out of time. So I want one more
Spread it.
time, if you can kind of turn us on to this, your website, socials, again, kind of run over the event and how people can reserve their space
Absolutely.
there, and we'll get out of your guys' hair.
So the website is happinessiscourage.com, happinessiscourage.com, or literally just Google happiness in the heartland. It's all over the place. It's on my social. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn,
There's the link
all the
there.
good stuff. Oh,
Send
perfect.
it
Thank
over.
you. And the links are in
Awesome.
there for registration and for more information about the event itself. I also will say the event does start at 2:00, but it is definitely something where if you are not able to come right at the top of the hour at 2 and you want to just come for laughter yoga later in the day or something, it's accessible in module format. So don't feel like, oh, I can't be there at 2, so I won't come at all. Please don't feel that way. Again, there is no event to attend the cost, but we do have a donation option if you want to help support the work of helping us do good work for our unhoused neighbors here in Indianapolis.
So be aware
yeah.
that is a Wednesday.
It is
So
a
it doesn't mean-
Wednesday.
That's a great day to ask off work. It's a great day to have the afternoon off
Hump
work.
day.
It is an International Day of Happiness. What a better excuse to take a personal day off.
Yeah, and
So
I want to point out that I didn't make that up. Like I make up a lot of stuff in
that's
my
from the
world.
United Nations.
The United
was-
Nations declared it in 2013 as an international
International Day of
observation that happiness is important for all of us.
Yeah.
So that's really good.
So call into work Wednesday because
Uh-huh.
you want to be happy
Well,
and head over.
Head on
And
over.
because it's a Wednesday, after the event leads into the church service the same night.
So you're welcome to
So
stay and
absolutely, and
see what it's
experience
all
for
about.
yourself. Exactly.
And I would encourage you. And again, if you're feeling a lack of connection and hugs in your life, well, we can fix that for you.
We absolutely can.
Oh yeah.
And what
there's
do you
no,
think
there
is
won't be any churchy church. There's no religion. It's not a religion.
It's like nothing
God
you can
stuff.
imagine.
There's none of that. Lots of I love yous and lots of hugs.
And if there's one thing that you think you're guaranteed to take from this experience when you leave, smile.
You're gonna have a smile on your face, guaranteed. Guaranteed, you'll be
I
smiling.
think it's that you're not alone.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much. I knew when we got into it, I was like, this is going to be another where 2 hours just goes by
Yeah.
super fast.
Flies.
You know?
We didn't give you any
And-
time.
Oh, yeah, we'll
he
talk.
doesn't need any time to be honest with you. I think you got just enough time, and
Dude.
we do always want to tell people what's coming up the next week, some
Mm.
shows and whatnot. And I always want to encourage you, if you have a show, definitely hit us up or, put it out there, whatever. I'm trying to stay engaged with everybody so I know what y'all got going on and whatnot. But I also operate under the pretense that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so if you want your show mentioned or whatever, please make sure I know about it. And I like when people say, hey, and they take the time to draw it to my attention too, because I don't know.
Just invite
You
them
know?
to your fucking shows
Eh.
on Facebook. Jesus.
And also if
He
you
wants to go.
would like to be a guest on the show, obviously hit me up.
Yeah, hit
and,
up Nick. Quit fucking with me.
But,
you want to hang out on Wednesday, hit me up. You want to hang out on Sunday, hit up Nick.
I do really try. It's if you got something going on, like I just don't want somebody
with
to
the
come
idea
on
to
that's,
promote.
I want people that have something going on, like an event and whatnot, like y'all got going on. And I think you did a wonderful job, by the way, of presenting this event and really letting us know what it's about and whatnot. So thank you for that. I hope that it, in our little way of our audience and whatnot, if we get just a couple people that gave just a minute of their time to watching this, I think you
See you next
did
year.
really
Do it
got-
again.
really great
Hell
job.
yeah.
All right, so we have on the first, which Friday, at the Mel, Wet Denim, Lousy Sue, and the Slevens. And then it's just so awesome. Like when I read these bands, sometimes it's like friend. I know you obviously the same, where it's like, and I think you're getting ready to have Cooch on the show, right?
That's right. Yeah, Wednesday. Yeah.
All right, and I'm
Cooch,
guessing
Jim
maybe-
Kuchkowski.
talk about this show. And then on Saturday at the Mel is Waxed, Crisis Actor, Crossfire, and Toxic Culture.
Mhm.
That sounds like an awesome show.
Yeah.
Is it the band names or yeah? And then Sunday show at Long Shot, Mr. Clit and the Pink Cigarettes. Don't laugh. They're actually one of my favorite bands in the world. So I think they on the last week show at having played at Hiller. So if you missed that Hiller, if you were like, for whatever reason and didn't make it, Long Shot next Sunday, Mr. Clit, Water Courses, EKG, and is it Lava? I couldn't tell. Lava. So once again, Sarah and Kris, thank you so much for joining us
Thank you for having
today.
us.
And we're gonna call it a show, I think.
We're gonna
Thank
call
you
it a
so
show.
much for watching and joining us. Thanks again to the Button Guy, our sponsor. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the conversation as much as I did with Sarah and Kris today. Our guests next week, you know what? We'll tell you. We'll make sure you know.
No.
I think maybe there's still a
To
little
be
work in
continued.
progress there. So
We leave you
gotta-
in suspense now.
It's going to be good, though. It's going to be good. That'll motivate us to make a commercial, actually, right?
Yeah, there you
All
go. I'll get
All
the
right.
ticket.
Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.
Wednesday, March 20th, 2 p.m. Unitarian Church. Go.